Alrighty. Afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's having a great week. It's certainly sneaking up towards the end of the year nice and quickly, which is I'm sure we're all looking forward to. And with all of the restrictions being eased a little more as well, I'm sure that everyone hopefully has enjoyed catching up with some friends and family that they perhaps haven't seen for a long time. Um, and no doubt doing their stress levels and mental health the world of good, getting out and about in the community a bit more and catching up with people they mightn't have seen for months this year. So today's Facebook Live is only going to be a relatively short one, but I just thought we talk at length about the stress response and what happens when we're actually confronted with a stressor. And we often refer to different elements of the human nervous system. And so what I thought we'd do today is just delve into the nervous system and discuss each of the elements, because there are quite a few elements that make up the human nervous system, and obviously some of them are more relevant than others when it comes to the body's response to a stressor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually draw it up on a bit of paper here for you, and we'll sort of go through it as we go. So the first thing we've got is we've obviously got the overall nervous system of the body. Alrighty, so you can see where to get in front of the camera there. Front and center, human nervous system. So it's divided into two further subcategories: the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Alrighty, so there we have the first breaking up of our two nervous systems there. So we'll start off with our central nervous system, and our central nervous system is made up of two elements: the brain and the spinal cord. Alrighty, and that's the end of our central nervous system right there. So the brain is effectively the control center of the body. It's responsible for things like receiving and processing information, thinking, producing, understanding language, controlling our motor function. So it plays a really big role in actually, when we're confronted with all sorts of information, actually interpreting and giving that information some meaning before we actually make a response to that. So that happens through certain structures in our forebrain, such as our thalamus and hypothalamus. And they're responsible for things like relaying sensory information, controlling autonomic functions, which we're going to touch on a little bit down the line as well. And then it actually contains the largest part of our brain, which is the cerebrum. To add some further complexity to this, most of the information processing actually then takes place in the cerebral cortex, which is a concept I'm sure everyone is familiar with as well. And the cerebral cortex is broken into four further lobes. So our frontal lobe, our temporal lobe, occipital lobe, and our parietal lobe. And so that controls lots of things from voluntary function, higher processing, what we hear, what we see, all of those kinds of things come from those four lobes. And I could talk about that for hours and hours on end, but for now it's just, the most important take home is that the brain is in receiving and processing sensory information. So once we've perceived that information, we need to do something with it, and that comes via the spinal cord. So the spinal cord runs down the center of our spinal column, so the vertebra that make up our spine. And the spinal cord, there's nerves there that transmit information from the organs to external stimuli. So they are our organs, our muscles, all kinds of things that require certain responses based on what we perceive at the time. So if we, have someone jump in front of us and we need to slam on the brakes in our car, for example, it's from our brain all the way down our spinal cord into the relevant muscles to slam on the brakes in our car. That can happen with involuntary things as well, so managing things like our blood pressure, those kinds of things too, that originates from our spinal cord before branching off into the peripheral nervous system, which I'm going to touch on now. So we've perceived it in our brain, it's gone down the nerves in our spinal cord, and then it's branching out from our spinal cord, like I just mentioned, to either the muscles or the organs in our body, and this is what's known as the peripheral nervous system. So this is almost like a communication network for the body between the brain and spinal cord and the rest of the body. So the peripheral nervous system is actually then broken into two categories, so stay with me here. So we've got the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. So you can see now in terms of our diagram, if I get that right there, we've got a number of different elements making up the human nervous system. So one of those elements of the peripheral nervous system that I just alluded to is the somatic nervous system. So this system is made up of nerves that connect to skin, organs, muscles, and it's responsible for nearly all of the voluntary muscle movements, as well as processing sensory information such as noises, sounds, smells, all of those kinds of things as well. So things that we almost have some control over, that falls under the bracket of our somatic nervous system. Alrighty. In terms of our autonomic nervous system, it basically works without us doing too much about it. So it's regulating things like our heart rate, digestion, our respiration rate, how our eyes, whether they dilate, arousal, urination, digestion, all of those things that happens or is an integral part of our physiological function for us to remain healthy. But we can't actually control them as such. I can't just, I can bend my elbow and straighten my elbow, but I can't just voluntarily get my heart rate to just increase just by thinking about it. I would have to go for a run or something like that to increase my heart rate, as opposed to, being able to voluntarily just, make it beat faster, for example. So it's this autonomic system or autonomic nervous system where I chat a lot about with a lot of people, because it's the one that plays a primary role in what occurs in our stress response. So our autonomic nervous system is actually broken into two further nervous systems. Our parasympathetic nervous system, and you'll have to bear with my slightly awkward drawing here, and our sympathetic nervous system. So there's our full thing all together. I'm holding the wrong side. Alrighty, so our autonomic branches into our parasympathetic and our sympathetic nervous system. So our sympathetic nervous system, it's basically the nervous system that controls our stress response, or how we respond to stressful situations. So effectively, we've touched on the stress response in previous Facebook Lives, but effectively it's the one that helps us secrete hormones like adrenaline and noradrenaline and cortisol, so that we can actually respond to the stressor at hand. So if you can imagine popping your hand on a hot stove, for example, it's our sympathetic nervous system that kicks into gear rapidly so that we take our hand off that hot stove, as a basic example. Another really common example that people allude to is if a tree was sort of falling down, and without really thinking too much, you jump out of the way. Again, that's your sympathetic nervous system kicking into gear. So it's at the central part of our fight and flight response, and it plays a really important element in actually keeping us safe, so that when we are confronted with stressful situations, so whether it's popping our hand on a stove, a tree falling down, cat running on the road out in front of us, that we can actually respond quickly and safely, so that we do as well stay safe and don't just sit there and let the tree fall on us, or leave our hand on the hot stove, for example. What we know though is that if this nervous system is turned on for a long period of time, and we're secreting things like cortisol for a long period of time, that can be really detrimental to our overall health. So that's where the parasympathetic nervous system plays a really important role to actually bring our bodies back to a state of equilibrium once the stressful response has subsided. So let's hypothetically use our example of the tree again. So the tree's going to fall on our heads. We jump out of the way. We're probably feeling pretty amped up for a little bit of time. We might not even know that we jumped out of the way. Our fight and flight response, our sympathetic nervous system has kicked in. And then once the dust settles, our parasympathetic nervous system will take over. So releasing hormones that will, I suppose, slow many of those high energy functions down. So it will decrease our heart rate, decrease our respiration rate, all of those kinds of things, and will bring us into a state of calm and relaxed feeling. So what's actually really cool about the parasympathetic nervous system is that there are techniques that we've discussed previously. So in our last Facebook Live, in that Have a Go series that Tom and I took you through, all of those are strategies to actually activate our parasympathetic nervous system to induce a state of calm, to help us with whatever stressful situation we might be confronted with. Work, you might be upset at something that's happening in the COVID world at the moment. Hopefully not so much now because everything's going really well. But there's different things like breathing techniques or mindfulness, meditations, warm water immersion, even cold water immersion, all of these different things to increase the activity of our parasympathetic nervous system, which can immediately get rid of symptoms of anxiety, stress, lift our mood, minimize things like our blood pressure, heart rate, all of those kinds of things as well. So the parasympathetic nervous system is a really good one to, I suppose, be aware of, in knowing that the same way that if I wanted to go for a run to get my heart rate to increase, I can equally, apply some techniques to decrease my heart rate and induce a state of calm and everything as well. So it's really important that when we are confronted with a stressor, immediately after we get our parasympathetic nervous system engaged so that we can then, like I said, bring our bodies back to that state of equilibrium. So hopefully that gives you a bit more understanding of the different elements of the nervous system. Like I said, there are a few there, and it can be sort of, it's best popped together in a diagram like so. Coordination is not that great in getting that sheet up in front of the camera for you, but like I said, it's quite a complex beast, and they all work together to make sure that we're, as humans, can be in the most equal or state as possible for most of the time. So next time you're particularly stressed, which does happen to all of us, think about what you can do to activate that parasympathetic nervous system to manage your own stress levels afterwards as well. This is something that I go into a lot of depth with in our Minds and Balance program. So there's going to be more information coming your way regarding this program soon. I'm really excited to bring it to everyone, and in that program we go into into more depth regarding our nervous system, how it responds when we're stressed, how it responds when we're calm, and most importantly, what we can actually do to control activation of our parasympathetic nervous system to make sure that we can be as calm and relaxed and happy as much as we can. So stay tuned for more information on the Minds in Balance program. That's going to be coming to you in the next couple of days. Thanks for watching. This is going to stay here if you want to come back and have a recap on the nervous system at all. If you do have any questions, comment below, touch base with us here in the clinic. We're always happy to help with any questions you may have regarding your own stress levels or mental health. Otherwise, have a great rest of the day, and I'll chat to you all soon.